So, we had an internet outage. I tried to fix it. I hope I'm back again. Twitch tells me everything is unstable. I don't know if anyone can hear me. Maybe some feedback would be great here at this point. Then I could try again to present my presentation. AJ, can you hear me at least? And can you drop a line in the chat? Hey, welcome back to CD Radar. Great. Yeah, well, I'm sorry for this. This is if you buy a premium account with Vodafone. Then sometimes at Sunday night it just get cut off and I had to restart the router, and now I'm back again. Yeah, so I'm sorry. I just checked how far I got into my presentation, and I did not really get far. So I have to restart it again. I was talking about signals. AJ, great to have you here. University Radar, wonderful. Those two signals, the one at Salzburg-Liefering, exiting Salzburg station area towards Freilassing, and then on the other side Freilassing towards Salzburg-Liefering. We were discussing what kind of signals we have and which of those signals is an Austrian and which of those signals is an German one, and we discussed it especially here on the distant signals. We have definitely an Austrian signal aspect here with the two yellow ones in a horizontal light with a green, and on the other hand, on the right side, we have a diagonally arranged signal with two yellow lights, what is definitely a German aspect. And nevertheless, even though the main signals here are obviously an Austrian signal with the indicator for an exit signal, Ausfahrsignal, and on the right side the main signal is definitely a German signal, the distant signal are actually the other way around. So we see here a German signal showing Austrian aspects on Austrian soil, where we have here in Freilassing an Austrian signal on German soil showing German aspects. Nevertheless, the signals are connected with the signaling system on the other side of the border. Why is that? Because the corresponding signals are actually introduced with those signals here. So on the left side, when we're leaving Salzburg station area, going beyond this Ausfahrsignal, exit signal, we hit the home signal for Freilassing, and the signal for Freilassing, you can see it here, is still on Austrian soil. The border between Germany and Austria is here in the middle of this river, the Saarlach, and because the station area of Freilassing is so far reaching across the border, we have the home signal for Freilassing on Austrian ground, and it is actually showing German aspects. So we have here a German signal showing German aspects for main and distant signal standing on Austrian soil, while it is preceded by an Austrian main signal that has a German distant signal at the same mast, and the German signal is showing Austrian aspects. And in the other direction, we have the German Ausfahrsignal, obviously on German soil, here in Freilassing station area, sporting an Austrian distant signal, introducing this home signal for Salzburg Hauptbahnhof with a German aspect on German soil. And why is that? Because we have so little track in between Salzburg and Freilassing, that always the braking distance that we need to calculate for having proper distant signals that actually can provide a warning for the main signal that succeeds reach over the border into the station area of the neighboring town. And this is why the distant signals need to be in the neighboring station area, and probably because we don't want to have mixed aspects and one on the same signaling post, we use the local aspects together with the local main signal, even though it is connected with the signaling installation on the other side of the border. And I think this is worth mentioning, that it works this way. Whereas here, the home signal for Salzburg is a completely Austrian signal standing on Austrian soil. Again, quite weird. We are going into Salzburg-Liefering here, and still it is the home signal for Salzburg Hauptbahnhof already. We will see that on another slide a bit better. All those stopping points and what would seem to be little stations on the Austrian side is actually already the Salzburg main station area, with all the other things either being only sections of the station, like Liefering, or even only mere stopping points. But we are getting here into Salzburg station area, and we are not leaving it again until we stop at Salzburg main station in the game. What is, in my opinion, quite interesting to see if you look at the track layout here. So obviously again my arrows. This German signal showing Austrian aspects on Austrian soil is telling you what you have to expect on this main signal. What is a German signal with German aspects standing on Austrian soil? And here this Austrian signal on German soil showing German aspects is telling you what you have to expect on the Austrian home signal standing on Austrian soil showing Austrian aspects, obviously. And well, this calls for some agreement between the Austrian and the German side, obviously, and this is part of the set of rules that I wanted to talk about today. Some more peculiarities of this kind. If you look at this, why are those buggers in the same club? You can see on the left side here, Salzburg-Liefering, obviously an Austrian shunting signal, not allowing shunting services to pass. For train services, this is of no relevance. Whereas those signals here are German signals, German LF6 signs introducing or announcing a speed limit to 90. Again, on Austrian soil together with the Austrian shunting signal, but German aspects. Why? Because they are announcing a limit to 90 that takes into effect shortly after the border, and the braking distance reaches over the border into Austrian soil. And this is why we need to have this here in Freilassing. The German signal, also that is obviously a German signal, or everything on German soil, but the announcing signals, the advanced warning boards, are in Austrian soil for the braking distance. And you know that PZB wise signals of this kind are protected with PZB magnets, and for the limit to 90 it is special, like 80 and 90. It only needs to be acknowledged with 1000 Hertz monitoring if you're running faster than 15 kilometers above the announced limit. So for this 90 thing, we only get 1000 Hertz monitoring if we are running 105 kilometers or faster. And for that, we need a special setup of PZB magnets, typically 3 of them, with a little Geschwindigkeitsprüfabschnitt, speed check section here, and 2 of them you can see here in the picture, and they are on Austrian soil, but according to German PZB installation rules. You know that Austrian PZB rules work a bit differently. You need a 20 kilometers drop and 20% for those signs to be protected with PZB magnets and requiring 1000 Hertz. And we have this German setup here, even on Austrian soil, and for that we need special rules to control all this. And more peculiarities, German indicators, not signals now, on Austrian soil are those ICE indicators that are supposed to tell the driver of an ICE train that even if you have the pantoos up at the rear of your train, that you are out of the dead section that is around the border here, and that it is safe to turn on the main circuit breaker again. They are together here with the Austrian home signals for Salzburg, coming into Bahnhofstal Salzburg-Liefering. And in this context, we have the German markers on Austrian soil that are also for railjet services, according to the rules, running in double traction with the locos at the back. So also in this context, the pantos are at the rear, and when passing those markers, you can be reasonably sure that you can turn on your main circuit breaker again, even if your pantos are at the rear of your train. Yeah, those thingies show us that we need special rules for border crossing. Actually, there are not so super many tracks that actually go across the border here between Germany, Bayern, and the Republic of Austria. You can see it's actually 8 of them. I've took this out of the Richtlinie 302.4000. Here we have this picture taken again from the Bundesamt für Kartographie und Geodäsie with all the 8 the border crossings marked. And what is quite interesting in my opinion is that we have 3 of them already in the game. Obviously Lindau to Lochau-Herbrands in the S-Bahn Vorarlberg, set in the time early 2020s, and Freilassing Salzburg, obviously here in our DLC that we are running at the moment, Bahnstrecke Salzburg Rosenheim, about 10 years earlier, early 2010s. And then quite recently the Mittenwaldbahn, Mittenwald-Scharnitz with a smaller one. Actually a lot of them are small, with just one single track line crossing the border in the Mittenwaldbahn, and this is set even further away time-wise in 1989, again with a different version of the 111 locomotive, the original version. What I'm intending to play very soon, since I've got the key according to the ambassador program, and so I will be able to play this again on a free key. The Bahnstrecke Salzburg Rosenheim I did not get for free. I paid for it, and I totally do not regret paying for it. It is a nice route, and it is fun driving, especially with the 111. The most important border crossing is probably Kiefersfeld and Kufstein. This is if you're running towards Italy, then you probably go across this border crossing. The others, Simbach, Braunau, Passau, Scherding, Frontenstein nach Vils und Griesen-Ehrwald, are, as far as I have seen, all single track crossings that are of not that big importance. Passau-Scherding, there was a couple of years ago a quite interesting almost accident when the 2 dispatchers on both sides of the border managed to send 2 trains into the single track section, and both thinking that the train should make their pass on the neighboring turf and not on the own turf, and only because the drivers were paying attention, there was no accident. Also, this shows that, especially with cross-border traffic on single track lines, you can't be careful enough and make sure whose responsibility is what, right? The radar said time to become a Das Vodafone ambassador. No. Well, we will look at more how this works and how the rules are after we've driven a bit more in our game. Close the doors. Dynamic brake is off. Oh, I did not turn off the motor fan even. Then I don't need to turn it on again. And I hope I did not forget anything and we can just start. Looks good. 3 to 4. And then we will have 15 to 20 kilonewton when starting the train, and then we can slowly accelerate, going to 40 kilonewtons. We're starting still out of a 60 limit, going back to the running line. There will be an 11 limit then. Make sure that the train is out of the switches before accelerating beyond the 60. An 11 limit, yes, a 110 limit. We can turn off the traction motor fans again, I guess. And we're approaching Prien am Chiemsee. In Schönepass, I did not notice a train line when snowboarding in Ehrwald. Also, I'm going to Passau next week. Maybe I can do some border crossing train spotting. Yes, do that for us. On Ehrwald, I think this is really a quite small single track line that is there going across the border. In June I will go to Innsbruck via the Kufstein crossing and then return journey over Salzburg Rosenheim, so I actually am visiting quite many of the border crossings this year. Yeah, you're right. You're doing them all. I think there will be an increase to 130 before we get to Prien. Hey, happy Easter, Spectre. So nice to have you on the stream. Isn't there also a border crossing in Feldkirch? Not to Germany. The border crossing from Feldkirch might be the one to Liechtenstein. So, from here we're running downhill. Theodoros, oh hello again. Nice to have you back. I'm sorry for the internet outage. And I also have to say, the Baureihe 111 is not a locomotive that you should drive when streaming. At least not if you intend to be. Here's the 130 limit. Still have to delay a bit until we can accelerate, and then we're almost at the station already. So there is not much point in accelerating, but since we're so late, I'll try it anyway. I don't know if yanking in the e-brake like this is actually a thing that you would do on an old locomotive like the 111. I've seen it done on trucks, locomotives. And it kind of works on the 111 if you do it. I don't know. Prien. All Bavarians lakes actually suspect the Chiemsee area is extremely nice, yeah. The Bavarian lakes. What you should not do, release the brakes when approaching a stopping position, but sometimes we are just too slow to get into a proper position here. Short. I think Trains in World has been doing great work lately with nice DLCs and good updates and fixes. That is nice of you to say so. I think they did some nice fixes lately. Obviously you would still want some more to be done in the signaling and safety systems department. Optically, they did a lot, I think, so the newer routes have really passages that are extremely nice. And the fix to the scoring system that showed that they can actually do something. Even if it is concerning core things. I think we're accelerating in a 130 limit here. The 628 has to wait for us. Can turn off the coolers again. I'm not entirely certain if this part of this dial here is working as intended. The outer part, it should actually give you the difference between your four driving motors, so that you can see whether you are going towards wheel slips. But it just seems to follow the normal needle for the speed clock. Limit to 110 coming in. I think it is here before we get into the bend. And then shortly after there will be an increase to 130 again, yes. It's just that we go through this speed gap here. And are slow enough to go through. Oh, the corner went into the Z-Bereich. So 130 for Bernau am Chiemsee. Already in the braking distance for it. can see that we're only braking with e-brakes. We have no pressure in our brake cylinders. What we can hear is the brake pipe, obviously. And now we have brake cylinder pressure because we're so slow. But the rest is being done by the dynamic brake. And see the radar, what did he find? Stups, der kleine Osterhase, fällt andauernd auf die Nase, ganz egal wohin er lief, immer ging ihm etwas schief. What a sad poem about a sad Easter bunny. There's Stups. Did I even make it completely to the platform at any rate? At least, even if I'm still a bit behind my stop marker. But actually, this is a locomotive for the braking and for the accelerating and staying on the timetable. That is challenging enough to do this outside of a stream. Stretching our train and then slowly adding more power. Would be great to fix the throttle lever so that it snaps back from your run-up position on its own. We're accelerating in a 130 limit towards Übersee. Going to know how much amperage we are drawing from the line. You can see it here, and with switching up one step, it is quite a big jolt that the amperage meter does here. And with 27 we are already almost at the maximum. There is step 28, but from what I read, this is only to be used if the overhead voltage drops below 14k volts, and this is why our Grenzwert Überwachungsgerät probably is preventing us from switching to step 28. Inspector says, not sure if you experience this on PC as well, but some 111s are easy to drive with the combined throttle lever, while others are difficult. Not sure at the moment which it is. Alright. The switch over from up and down shift to percentage, yeah. The Z-Bereich. I guess it is easier to use it in the Z-Bereich. Then you are back to what you usually want to do, and then the train switches the steps automatically. The resource that I have read is that you are totally welcome to use the Z-Bereich if there is not more switching going on as compared to using the run up and run down settings. So we're getting an increase to 140 when we're approaching Übersee. So now I'm trying to do it with a lot of brakes on. Does this loco could only be used in Germany, Austria and Switzerland? I actually don't know if it was used anywhere else. It's one of those locomotives that were still built under the Bundesbahn regime for their own use mainly, so I don't know if they used it anywhere else. Maybe Spectre knows. I think it cannot be used in Switzerland because of the pantograph, which is too wide. That is totally possible. I was just thinking about whether it was ever used in Switzerland. They were supposed to have a different kind of pantographs. Again, I'm a bit too slow. At least not the ones that we have in the game here on this version. Oops. That was not enough. I wanted to have not release. Right, those scissor-like pantographs. They should have had the more modern ones, but they were used for the 103 locomotives then at the time, and so those locomotives here had to have the old scissor style pantographs. How did they do cross-border back then with the electric locos? I mean, we will get to the rules for the electrification for cross-border traffic, but for Switzerland they needed different locos then, I guess. But I did not look into the rules for cross-border traffic with Switzerland. Today we're talking about Austria, and in Austria they could switch. So at the moment it's a 140. Now I got into the Z-Bereich, and you can see that it is just adjusting automatically if I use the Z-Bereich here. But I actually don't want the Z-Bereich. I want it with run up and run down. See, the radar, speaking of cross-border change, is a very fascinating technology, is the one for changing track gauge while driving. Oh yeah, good thing that we did not have this for Germany, Austria. Slow down to 130. Spectre, I don't know why, but it is a different specification. The ICE, for example, has a different panto to go cross border. Yeah, that's one thing. If you have vehicles that can do both, then they change the pantographs. Limit to 130. Approaching Bergen. And Theodoros adds from Germany to France and Poland with different power rate. Also, that is true. But typically you have neutral sections between the countries so that you can adjust one power system to the other. And then the vehicle obviously needs to have a pantograph that fits to the system and to the loading gauge. So you have to make sure that your electric specifications as well as the physical specifications of the pantograph agree with the rules. I think that we're getting a... No, we're not getting anything. Those signals are a bit hard to read with this. Now we're getting a limit to 100. And CD radar says yes, and this is why locomotives have 4 pantographs sometimes, limiting to 90 for stopping at Bergen in Oberbayern. Theodoros, oh, and the safety systems were different back then, so yes, probably it would have been different locos. For Switzerland, yeah, and Switzerland is still safety system wise a different thing. So come on, slide a couple of meters further, my train. Yeah. Theodoros wants external cameras. I will do it when we're driving again, right? Please check the site for the country's code. On my 111, you mean? Or which country's code you want to see? So, getting out of Bergen is still a 90. And now it did not go back on its own. This is why the Grenzwertüberwachung stopped us from running beyond the 7. Here's the 90 that was announced before the stop. And now we're going uphill nicely. Through a quite picturesque part of the route. What I also like here is that this indicator for the hohe Abbremsung lights up after a certain threshold. And you might remember when we talked about the R brakes, that they increase the brake cylinder pressure beyond a certain speed threshold. This is indicated with this indicator here for the hohe Abbremsung. If that light lights up, then we will actually have an increased brake cylinder pressure with our R brakes, Rapidbremse. And Hero says it's only D there. As far as I know, if the loco can go outside Germany, it needs other country codes, like on the Vectron. Is that so? Yeah. But I think this is a different register. The honk is a bit weak, isn't it? Increased to 100. Let's hear the horn. So, yanked it across. Going downhill. And already preparing for Traunstein. Need a bit more speed. I lost more speed than I thought. Traunstein will have a signaled speed limit, I think, to 60, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. It is an HP 2. But in our Buchfahrplan we will probably be told that the signal is an E60. Don't forget to acknowledge the 7 here, even if it is not relevant for us, because we are slowing down to 60 anyway. And around the corner there will be signals. Never forget to switch off your throttle, otherwise you can't accelerate. And here is the 60 signal. Don't forget to acknowledge the HP2. That's, for whatever reason, a thing that I sometimes like to forget. I'm so happy that I made it for the 60. And then I forget to acknowledge the obvious HP2. Running into Traunstein. Past the high SH1 and another high SH1. So let's see if I can stop this thing here in a proper spot. Yeah, that works. So, CD Radar, here you can take a path through that strange track on the right, and then it will give you the red signal with the 3 white dots. Ah, interesting. I will have to try. I've sent pic on Discord, says Theodore, was referring to the code I meant. Also great. I will check this out later. And Chuckskull, lol, I just noticed you're playing with almost no HUD, more surprising on a German route with all systems. Yes, that's what we're doing. Thank you for acknowledging that. And it's sometimes frustrating, but also a lot of fun. So before we start, release the brakes, turn on the traction motor, and then get this thing on the road. Don't forget we are in the starting program because we stopped, or now it's not the starting program, now it's the restricted monitoring, since we stopped in our 1000 Hertz monitoring. But we are getting an HP2 with ZS360 that allows us to release. It's a nightmare for me, he says. Yes, we are saving 100,000 points. So then they can make me use the HUD with 100,000 channel points. Alright, stay below the 60 until we're out of the station, across the switch. Then we can go up to 70, later than 90. Beautiful bridge here, by the way. Can turn off my traction motor coolers again. Unfortunately, overheating of the traction motors is not simulated. I think, at any rate, it's not simulated. Theodoros, will Tiger crack his own rule about HUD when it comes to Tadami line? No. I will dig into it. Now I'm beyond the 140. I will dig into it so that I understand what is happening there. And if I have to run the rules through 3 different translator programs. So what did we actually increase to 130? Teisendorf is next. I think we will have a dip to 110 on the way. And Theodoros is looking, no, Spectre is looking forward to the presentations about Japanese signaling with the original Japanese names. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how I'm gonna do this. But I'm looking forward to new signaling systems. It's always like I will try next time I play Trains in World 5. God bless my train passengers. Yeah. Well, they signed up for this when they got casted by Dovetail Games. Here's the 11. And after the bend we will be allowed to go 130 again. I'm sure. I think there it is coming up. Here it is, 130. Teisendorf itself, I think it is down to 100. But in between we can rush. I don't want to go into speeding here. This is really a nice piece of track. The run to Teisendorf and then on to Freilassing. Down to 110. You have to add dessus after every line to appear. Okay. I don't know about that. But I will ask you when we get there. $110. Will be a further reduction to 100, I think. But with this we can do with the e-brake alone. Oh no, Spectre is now speaking Japanese. Not enough that he speaks Dutch. Now he speaks Japanese as well. Here's the 100. And now we are coasting into Teisendorf. Did we turn off the fans? Yeah, we did turn off the fans. Sometimes those signals are so difficult to read with this lighting that I just hit the Wachsamkeitstaste to see if there was anything on. Google Translator speaks Japanese, not me, suspect. Okay. So we have no way of verifying. The good thing about PZB is that it stops you if you're wrong. That's true. It will be interesting actually to find out if the 111 in the Mittenwaldbahn actually only has Indusi 60 instead of PZB, and if the implementation of Indusi 60 actually works like Indusi 60. The 111 that we have here has already PZB 90. So all is good here. So, and now we gotta prepare for the stop at Teisendorf. So this is the last stop before we get to Freilassing. Close the doors. Release the brakes. Turn on the traction motor fans. Direct brake release. Three or four. And the train stretches nicely. So last run. City Radar is reciting easterly rhymes. And I have to accelerate to 100 and 110 and then 160. This is actually the last part where we can get to 160 before we get to Freilassing then. Osterhas, komm in unser Haus, leer deine bunten Eier aus, versteck sie hier, versteck sie dort, wir finden sie an jedem Ort. Alright. I didn't know that the German language had treasures like this. The land of poets and thinkers, yes. That's what we are. Do you know any Easter carols? I don't know if there are any Easter carols at all in Germany. Christmas carols, yes, but Easter carols? Increase to 110. Turn off my fans. And then we should actually get to the 160 part. I hope I did not pass it and miss it. No, I think it is coming up now. 160. And let it go. Let's see if we can reach the 160 before we get to Freilassing. Are there any traditions, the reader is asking here? Children say nursery rhymes as they go from house to house to collect eggs. No, this is not a thing that you do in Germany. Here you're collecting the eggs that your parents or someone hid in the garden or the house. But at least according to my knowledge, there is no going from house to house to collect the eggs. So this is why we have the new bogies on this locomotive as compared to the 110, to be able to go 160. Oh, and I overshot the 160 mark, too bad. None that I am aware of suspect, and not in Easter actually. Children walk around on St. Martin's Day with their lanterns and collect sweets. Yeah, that's true. And obviously on Halloween now, but not on Easter. Oh, it's Alex. Hi, Tiger. He says, so nice to have you on the stream again after quite a while. How are you, Alex? All good? And everyone obviously is three kilometers. That means we're getting a signal very soon, and this will be a sharp break because we're getting an HP2 and VR2 for the HP2. And then we have to slow down. Not here, but probably at the next one. Slow down to 90. Aha, we have picked a service where we are going straight. That's interesting. So we don't actually have to slow down that much. I almost feared that I missed something. And going in here, because often you get an HP2 at this signal. This service actually seems to take us through the fast track. So, chat is always developing when I'm trying to stop my train halfway in a position where it belongs. I will get back to the chat as soon as the train is at a standstill. Yeah, I was a bit much breaks in the end, but at any rate we stopped where we were supposed to. And I will pause and make the second part of the presentation. Here you can see the next thing what happens is Salzburg Taxham, Salzburg Eigelhof, Salzburg Mühlen-Altstadt, what is all parts and stopping points within Salzburg Hauptbahnhof station. Alex says, yes, I'm fine. What about you? Missed your streams? I see. So it must be some Eastern tradition of the poor, so that families can afford eggs at least for Easter, says CD Radar. Or they used to find out if the neighbors had better eggs than reported to the STB. But I'm not sure I should give my chicken's egg to kids anymore now that there's all the worry about the PFAS. Inspector asks STB, the tax office, and see the radar. I hated it as a kid anyway. I was too shy to sing to strangers. Theodorus, nowadays the eggs probably also have tariffs. Well, not if you are not exporting them, I guess. And do you at least make sticks from willow twigs? Now they are totally into the Easter tradition thing. Not for Easter. We don't make sticks from willow twigs for Easter, do we? Alright, guys. We come back to the discussion about the Easter traditions quite soon. Now I will want to finish what I started talking about in terms of rules for cross-border traffic with our trains between Germany and Austria. And for that, I wanted to show you the horse's mouth itself. And for that, I hope I can activate my browser here. I don't want to display everything. Not the whole desktop, actually. Not that one. That one, I think I wanted to display. So see what we have here. It is weirdly aligned. And again, it is much too big. But it is the horse's mouth when it comes to directives from the Deutsche Bahn. This is the website. Here, let's move that out of the way so we have enough to show. This is where I always find the directive for running trains in Germany. This is the Richtlinien des betrieblich-technischen Regelwerks der Infrastrukturnutzungsbedingungen 2025. This is the set of rules that the DB InfraGO AG imposes on companies that want to run trains on their tracks. And here you find, for example, the Signalbuch, and later on you find all the rules for using PZB, LZB, G&T. This is the Richtlinien 483. You also find the Fahrdienstvorschrift NV and the normale Fahrdienstvorschrift here, and you also find a lot of things for grenzüberschreitende Bahnstrecke. This is cross-border traffic. Denmark, Poland, Czechia, Austria, Switzerland, France, Luxembourg, and Belgium. And we are looking for what we find for Austria, and here you find actually one module for each and every crossing. For example, Scherding-Passau, Simbach, Braunau, Freilassing, Salzburg, and this is actually what we want to look into here. And if you look at those thingies, yeah, it's actually still on the stream, and you can see that this is more or less an agreement. We will see that between the two infrastructure managers. DB Netz is still here called, and then the ÖBB Infrastructure AG for Austria. And then you can find what they agreed on, and for example, all the rules, Lage der Grenzen, they say where the borders actually are, how this translates into the register of the tracks, and what are the Gleise des Grenzübergangs from this signal to this signal, and so on. And I will tell you the essence of all this in a presentation, for just a quick run through so that we have seen what there is all in a directive of that kind. The dispatcher on both sides, who is responsible for the border crossing tracks, and then the signals and the PZB, how that works. And here especially we find all the rules why we have home signals, Einfahrsignal for the station in Freilassing on the Austrian soil, elektrischer Zugbetrieb, what we do with our overhead catenary, and how we can make the trains run from one net into the other, how they communicate, at what point we switch from GSM-R Germany to GSM-R Austria, and then operating rules, a lot of operating rules for signals, for PZB. And here, for example, you can find how to translate the Austrian aspects, as we have seen in the beginning, on the German signals, distance signals showing Austrian aspects, into German signal aspects, right? How they translate and how to read it, and the other way around for what the Austrian signals are, well, which German signal aspects translate into what Austrian aspects you have to expect on the next main signals, where you can get your Ebula and your Buchfahrplan from, and how which part has to write into the law if there is a temporary speed restriction, where this is fine. So it's always good if both parties agree on how to put that into, so that not one party thinks the other one will do it properly and then it is not done at all. Also Fahrordnung on what track you're actually running, what to do with extraordinary sendings and vehicles, if it is allowed, and here it is not allowed to use pushing locomotives in this area. According to what rules you have to assemble your trains, and this is interesting because you have to follow both rules, German and Austrian rules. How to use written orders, how to translate it according to the German form into Austrian form, and all that stuff needs to be more or less set out so that it is not, well, that there are no misunderstandings and accidents because of it. Nebenfahrten, Sperrfahrten. In German it would be Sperrfahrten. In Österreich, in Austria it's Nebenfahrten. You have to agree how to go beyond a red signal, according to what rules this can be done. Emergencies. What happens if your train ends up standing in between, if your train breaks asunder, like if it separates Zugteilung, Zugtrennung, intentionally or not intentionally, and what to put in the Fahrplan actually. So a lot of rules that we can find here and that need to be set out to make a cross-border train run work. So what is it essentially that we have to keep in mind for it? This is more or less our situation here. We have a track, double track, running from one country to the other. This is the national border here between Germany on one side and Austria on the other side. So this will be the Freilassing station, and this will be Salzburg main station. Already again, it is already here starting the Salzburg main station area. All the other stops in between are merely station sections, Bahnhofteile, or simply stopping points in between. So the first station section that we get into is Salzburg-Liefering, but it is already part of Salzburg main station. And Alex says, I have to go, guys. I hope see you soon. Have a nice end of day. So have you, Alex. Nice that you dropped in. On Germany side, obviously, we have as an infrastructure manager the DB InfraGO AG as the Eisenbahn-Infrastrukturunternehmen, and on Austria side, the ÖBB Infrastruktur AG as the infrastructure manager on the Austrian side. And the general rule is the national border equals the border between the jurisdictions between the two infrastructure managers. Makes sense. So if there are no special rules, if there are no exemptions, then each and every one will take care up to the national border about the tracks, about the dispatching, about the operating rules, about the signal rules, and so on. To make it lock into each other and to work together, those two infrastructure managers, obviously neither party can order the other one to do something specific, so they have to make like a contract, an agreement, and agree on a common set of rules between those infrastructure managers. And this is then called here in the terms of our directive in Germany, die Zusatzvereinbarungen, Regelung der örtlichen Besonderheiten, RÖB. Those are rules for local peculiarities, for the Besonderheiten, and those are for those tracks that are involved in cross-border traffic. So it is a contract, it is not like an order, not a directive, whatever. They have to agree on it. And how does this translate to the train operating companies, the Eisenbahnverkehrsunternehmen, EVUs, train operating companies? Obviously, both parties have to subject those train operating companies to obey with those contractual rules that they came up with. And those are then Nutzungsvorgaben, Zusatzbestimmungen für das Befahren des Eisenbahngrenzübergangs. Those are additional directives imposed by the both infrastructure managers on the train operating companies that want to operate trains in both of their jurisdictions. So this is, well, at least interesting for me, where actually the power to direct the train operating companies comes from. And we need to have a contract, an agreement between the two sides first, and then they impose it onto the train operating companies, both of them, and hopefully both the same set of rules so that it makes sense. In those rules, for example, you can read that Freilassing and Salzburg Hauptbahnhof are the Grenzbahnhof, the border station, and that the whole station, the whole piece of track starting with the station area Freilassing and involving all the station area in Salzburg Hauptbahnhof is what is called the Grenzbetriebsstrecke, the track section for cross-border operations. What is important if you want to have people staffing your train? So all the staff needs to be acquainted with the operating rules on the other side as far as it is necessary to operate this part of that track, the Grenzbetriebsstrecke. They don't need to be necessarily familiar with the whole set of operating rules of the neighboring country, but they need to know as much about those operating rules that they can safely operate the Grenzbetriebsstrecke. So they need to be acquainted with all the peculiarities and stuff like this. This is why you have to set out what the Grenzbetriebsstrecke is. And then we have already found out in the beginning of our stream here that we have the peculiarity that the home signal for Freilassing, the Einfahrsignal, home signal in that direction, is on Austrian ground. It is not on German ground, it is not on the border, but because we don't have a lot of room between Freilassing and the border, the home signal for Freilassing, or even actually the home signals, because it's more than one, are on Austrian turf. We have seen those signals. They use German aspects and are a couple of meters in front of the border that is in the middle of the river. And the home signals for the Austrian side are just a couple of meters further on, so that we have an extraordinary amount of about 150 meters of open track between the two stations here. And obviously, it is clear for everyone that we cannot fit braking distances for distance signals for the home signals into our 150 meters of open track between the two stations. So the distance signals need to sit in the station area of the neighboring station, obviously. Then we have a second thing that we need to see what sections of track are what. The Rangierhalttafel, the limit of shunt for Freilassing. It is closer to the proper station area than the home signal. This is when shunting services cannot go further at this point. And it is defined in the set of rules that we just ran through that the set of track between the limit of shunt and the home signal for Salzburg Hauptbahnhof is what is called the border crossing tracks, die Gleise des Grenzübergangs. And for those Gleise des Grenzübergangs is defined which traffic dispatcher is in charge for both sides, or for either side. So there is a German one and an Austrian one, and they are both responsible for this section of track, the border crossing tracks, Gleise des Grenzübergangs. So you can see it is a quite peculiar situation, because there is only so much little open track between the two stations, and the home signals for Freilassing are on Austrian grounds, and then we can already enter the Salzburg Hauptbahnhof main station area here. Oh, there is my presentation a bit broken, because this LF1 sign here is looming up out already. But we will get to this. I won't fix it now. So what is the basic rule for signal rules? Typically, the signal rules and what the signals look like follow the position of the signal. So if the signal is on German soil, then it should follow German signaling rules. If it is on Austrian soil, then it should follow Austrian signaling rules. And this is why, for example, obviously the home signal for Salzburg, and here we have seen it in the presentation, this LF7 sign for entering Freilassing, look like a German signal here, and this is like an Austrian signal here. But there are exceptions. For example, the home signals for Bahnhof Freilassing, and this is set out in those rules, are sitting on Austrian grounds and show German aspects, as we have seen. And there are more exceptions. Advanced boards and distance signals, as we have already seen in the beginning of our stream here, they can follow the rules of the neighboring country. So that if we have to announce our German home signal for Freilassing, then this will also be an German signal, the distance signal, announcing this German home signal. And this is why we have in the Austrian area of Salzburg-Liefering, a German distance signal, and a German LF6 sign here announcing the LF7 sign just behind the border, where we have here Austrian distance signal, Einfahrvorsignal, for the home signal on the Austrian side. But the distance signals are showing the local aspects if they are shown with local main signals. So this was why we have this funny situation that we have outlandish signals that are showing inlandish aspects. Here a German signal showing an Austrian aspect on the Austrian side, and here an Austrian signal showing a German aspect on the German side. All because it is specifically agreed upon in those set of rules that we have looked at. And it makes sense because the signal that announces needs to be connected in the whole dispatching system with the main signal that is announced. Another exception is that the ending boards for temporary speed restrictions, for example, also follow the board or the signal that marks the beginning of a speed limit. Here, for example, if you have a speed limit that is announced in Austria, starts in Austria, and ends in Germany, will fully signaled with Austrian temporary speed restriction signs. Ankündigungssignal, Anfangssignal, Endsignal. Whereas if you have a speed restriction that is announced in Austria but starts in Germany and ends in Germany, then you will have German signals for the temporary speed restriction, starting with an LF1, an LF2, and then the LF3. Doesn't make a lot of difference for the ending boards because they look so similar, but this is an Austrian signal and this is a German signal. So I don't know about you, but I find this quite interesting how to do this. So for those announcement, start and end, it is typically the start signal that is relevant and the others follow suit. Quite similar for operating rules. They follow the position, and that is quite interesting, of the driver. That means if your train is across the border, then the operating rules typically follow the position of the driver, even if most of the train is still in the country on the other side of the border. There are exceptions. It is stated that for entering and exiting the station area of Freilassing, the whole procedure is covered by German operating rules, what goes together with the fact that the station area well extends to Austria as far as the home signals are concerned. And another exception to the operating rules is that in connection with signals on foreign soil, so as much as I understand it, if you're running one of the German signals here on Austrian soils, then this trip situation must be handled according to German operating rules. What makes sense, so the operating rules follow the signaling rules on this specific signal. But you can see this can actually get quite complicated if anything goes wrong and your train stalls in this area here, and you have to find out who is actually responsible and what rules to follow and how to get this train to safety again. Then a thing that we have already talked about, the communications. We have the German digital radio network GSM-R Germany, and we have the Austrian one, and the both ideally overlap a bit so that we don't have any white spots. And then you have to agree at what point you switch to the other system, and then it is agreed on that you're switching when you're actually standing at the station in Freilassing or passing the station in Freilassing, and then you would switch from one to the other, so not at the border, not on the bridge, but in the station area in Freilassing. And the other thing that we've talked about already is what do we do with our power grid, with the overhead catenary. This is the German one, and this is the Austrian one, and they are not connected at this point. Actually, they are separated by a neutral section, what is actually a shortened neutral section. So it is shorter than it is usually, this neutral section, only 5 meters in length, and it cannot be switched on. What is a specific? Normally, neutral section can be switched on in case that a vehicle with pantographs, an electric vehicle, stalls in the neutral section, and so that you can save it and allow the vehicle to go out of the neutral section again. There are special procedures to make everything secure, and then you can actually turn on the neutral section so that the electric vehicle can drive out of it, and you don't need to rescue it with a different locomotive, especially with a diesel locomotive or whatever. And this neutral section is special insofar as that it cannot be switched on, because it does not belong to either side. And if a vehicle actually gets stranded here and is not able to switch pantographs, right? If the vehicle is long enough, then it is running with the back panto, for example, and stalls in the neutral section, then it can lower the back pantograph, raise the front one, connect then outside of the neutral section to the power grid again, and then save itself by its own accord, according to a certain procedure to make it safe. What you should not do in this situation is raise both pantographs and shortcut both power lines on both sides, maybe. That is a situation that you don't want to be in. So it is strictly forbidden to raise both pantographs in this situation. And if it is not possible to do it like this, then you need to be pulled out with a second vehicle out of this neutral section. And this neutral section we will see when we're going to Austria, actually, and we see those 3 signs, the announcement and then the start and the end. Since it is in Germany, it is obviously German signals, and in the other direction as well. Here we follow the rule that the announcement board follows the start, so that we have German boards here, what does not make a big difference because the Austrian ones look almost the same. Yes, I think this is what I wanted to tell you about the situation with cross-border traffic. It is actually quite interesting. Here's a picture from Google Maps, I think, where we can see the area here, what it looks like on the map. We have Freilassing here, we have the border along the river, and then here's where Salzburg-Liefering begins. Another thing that I wanted to show you before we go on actually is how the situation changed here in the border area. Why am I not getting any? Here we are. Okay. Can only take a little while until I'm back. For that I need Google Earth. And we will look at the situation in Google Earth. If I can actually make it go. Here we are. Here we are. And here is something that you can actually see. So, Google Earth and Salzburg. wrong one. Wow, they even made rules about where and which pantograph to change between the distance of 5 meters. Well, it is a good thing that they made rules for it, because otherwise you might fry your locomotive. So, here we are in Salzburg, Kapuzinerberg, where this Porsche guy is planning to drill his tunnel through. And Festung Hohensalzburg here, what we can see in the game. Here is the main station. You can see how big this area is actually that belongs to main station. All that is Salzburg main station area. Even here, I think it's called Gnigel or something on this side, belongs to Salzburg main station. And here we get to the intermodal terminal in Liefering, and this is the area where we get to the border. Here is the bridge, here is the border in the Saarlach, and what we can see if we look at it, nowadays there are 3 lines, and we will find in our game we only have this double pair of lines and not the third one. And this is because we are situated in the early 2010s. And if you look at the historical imagery and go back a couple of years, you can see that in 2015, for example, that's not a good picture here. Maybe we find a better one. This is what we have for our DLC. Yeah, that was better. No, that one was no better. The one in between. Here, for example, you can see 2 lines, just as in our DLC. And we go to like 2016, for example. Can see that it is in the progress of being built. Here's a nice one. Yes. So that makes sense. This is why now the situation here is different from the one that we have in the game, because at around 2016-17 they built this 3rd line. And so if you read the rules, don't be confused that they are always talking about 3 lines and 3 tracks. And in the game there are only 2. Good. Then let's tidy up my stuff here, and then we can actually run the train to Salzburg. One thing already, the speed signage that we have here in the game, I have not been able to understand it yet. Oh, it's the other side that we're on. So why are we not running? Now we are. And again, we are running up to the exit signal, starter signal at Freilassing. And the diagonal green is an Austrian signal. The distance signal for the home signal of Salzburg main station. Now we're getting here an LF6 for going right, announcing 80. We are getting an LF712 with an LF2, what is a bit weird. Even though the speed limit is 80 at this point. We've got the dead section announced again, an announcement of 80 with an LF2. Dead section coming in, I open the main circuit breaker. Close the main circuit breaker. If you want the train line to come back, you need to switch it on again. Here from behind, the home signals for Freilassing. Signal repeater Austrian kind. And here are the home signals for Salzburg. There are also the ICE markers. Now the ICE is through the dead section. And we are safely in Austria. German stuff. Ronnie, you're a bit late. You could have helped us with the special regulations for running from Germany to Austria. Ist die Baureihe 111 in your Zusatzbescheinigung? The ICE markers, Juniper, they tell you that... I wish it was due to this running. The ICE markers are telling you that if you're running a train with the pantographs at the back, essentially, that you are safe to close the main circuit breaker again, because your whole train, even the back, is through the neutral section. There's also an interesting border crossing the city radar. Zittau-Radek. Not Niso, where the line passes through Poland, but there is no stop there. Oh, interesting. Now we are passing Taxam. Behind Taxam we will be slowed down to 110. According to Austrian rules, not announced. Theodoro says, good thing that the documents we train simmers use are and can be legally obtained, unlike War Thunder communities and their military secrets. Oh yeah, that is true. I don't want to raid military secrets here. And speaking of border, I heard there will be a new high-speed line between Dresden and Prague through tunnel. Oh, I don't know. Applies also to coupled ICE or double length. I do not know exactly. Probably only to the trains that run there, according to the timetable. From the rules that I read, they apply to railjet services with the double traction railjet on the back of the train. At any rate, militärischer Abschirmdienst knocks on the door at 6 AM. No, I don't want to get in trouble with the militärischer Abschirmdienst. They are typically not a lot of fun, those guys. Heroes, if the cons is too complex, we can also use Roadrunner feature. Yeah, that's true. So, and did not acknowledge the Halt erwarten because I was reading the chat. Thank you a lot. Please inflate my brake pipe again. Where is the Roadrunner on the 111? That is true, but the 111 is no ICE in the end. Okay, my dear loco. Get your brake cylinders free and then we will run again. Since we're starting, oh, we already have the traction fans on anyway. T and Kaiserschmarrn with the manager, yes. Let me rephrase, we are Red Runner in the 401 or 2. Well, the railjet has a Roadrunner, but if the locomotives are at the end of the train, then you probably cannot use this feature from the cab car. So, and now let's safely stop our train at Salzburg Hauptbahnhof, a very pretty station. And from what I see, they want us to stop in front of this protection signal that is actually not ordering us to stop. Nevertheless, we are supposed to stop there. Here we are. And now that we have stopped and finally will close our doors, it will switch to red, I'm sure. Again, this is one of the situations. In some services you have to stop further on the platform. Here with this closed and protected signal repeater. That should actually be yellow in my understanding of the Austrian rules. There is typically a 1000 Hertz PZB magnet protecting it. So now that the doors are closed, they switched it to red. And Theodore says, or count the electricity poles, I guess it's usually between 50 meters. Yeah, I think if you have an outlandish composition of your consist, then you need to refer to that. Probably in whatever resource that they give you, they will tell you for what formations and compositions you can actually rely on those ICE indicators. See, I assume that when driving a train locomotive with the ability to switch multiple systems via SV, you have to do this when crossing the border. Yeah, probably. Okay. I guess we are quite late already, since we had an internet outage before my stream was cut into 2 halves. Anyway, I thank you guys that you stayed with me for this, well, a bit outlandish topic between German and Austrian operating rules, and I found it quite interesting how many things you have to think of when running trains from one country to the other. And well, this is what makes a railway network actually valuable, that you can go beyond the borders And between Germany and Austria, I think it is quite easy after all. And maybe we will have the opportunity at some point to see how it works with Poland and Czechia, France, Luxembourg, Belgium, and the Netherlands, Denmark. I think this is all countries around Germany where it makes sense to cross the borders. Unibels, vielen Dank. I hope you all have a great week. That's what I hope, guys. Thank you so much for staying with me, for your support, for your input into this. Be nice to each other, take care, and have a great week. Bye bye.